Welcome to Boomhauer 69's channel, and today Boomhauer here is going to talk about the vintage technology, or vintage electronic if you will, that got me started in liking vintage stuff. When I was a kid, when it comes to vintage cars anyways, when I was a kid, I always liked the movie Herbie the Love Bug and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I always liked those movies, and those are what developed me a liking for vintage cars from like the 1900s and so forth. And well, today I'm going to show what kind of really helped start it all. This here is a what you call a citizens band radio CB, and on the back here you can see it has ports on here. This CB does not work. It's got a broken microphone, and this is your microphone. You will hit this button, and that will turn the microphone on so you can talk into it. And this is to where you can, it's like a hanger. Allows you to hang it somewhere, And this here's got two ports on the back, PA, speaker, and speaker. These are for to hook up external speakers. Like a PA speaker allows you to switch this on the front here to what they call PA or CB, and that PA will allow you to use the speaker and talk to people on the outside if you have one hooked up to your vehicle. You know how like the police officers back in the day, that's what that does. You know how a police officer can key up on the microphone and tell you to pull over if you get pulled over by law enforcement. That's what you can do on here, is have one of those and say to your buddies, driving by, hey, how you doing, or something. And then this port right here is where you hook up your antenna. And this is your plate mount where you would mount it, A lot of truckers use citizens band CB radios and stuff. And this is what started it all for me. When I was a kid, my dad was part of the CB generation. He was born in 1957, and he grew up using the 23 channels and the 40 channel CBs, because back when he was a kid, they didn't have computers and chat rooms. All they had was one of these to talk to other people around, and everybody had a CB. And then, like you do nowadays, like in chat rooms, you have a little sign-in nickname. Well, on CBs, they call that a handle. You would have a made-up little nickname called a handle that everybody would call you by. You wouldn't use your real name on a CB. You'd say, yeah, breaker, this is so-and-so. You'd make you up a handle. Like my dad, he used the handle Silent Ears and stuff, because he mostly just listened. He didn't talk much on a CB. And this right here is your channel selector. This is an old 80s 40 channel. Now what happened was back in the sometime in the 70s, I want to say middle to later 70s, the FCC only allowed 23 channels, and then later on in the 70s, sometime in 80s, truckers and people complained that there wasn't enough channels, that the channels were overcrowded, and so people requested more channels, so the FCC allowed CB companies to make 40 channels. This is a Radio Shack brand realistic 40 channel. As you can see here, there's the realistic Radio Shack logo. For those who don't know, Radio Shack back in the day made CB radios as well. And this here is, of course, again, your channel selector. This is your squelch to help kind of tune in somebody's voice. This is your out, and this is also another kind of to help filter static, And then you have PA and CB. CB allows you to switch it so you can listen to the different 40 channel stations. And this is, again, your volume and on and off. Right here is where you turn it on and off. Volume and off is all one unit. And what you would do is on the back here, you would have an antenna, just like you do a TV. You would screw in an antenna, which I have one. I didn't grab it right away. But first, you would plug this into your cigarette lighter or DC port on your device. You can even hook one of these up to a power stations, for a survival situation. Let's say, cell phones are down and telephones are down and you need to contact somebody. As long as somebody in your area has one of these and they're in range, you can use a CB to radio to somebody, hey, I need help or something. Let's say, gas is getting so high where people are not going to be able to afford it. And let's say you live out in the middle of nowhere and you ain't got no gas. You have a CB on hand. You can always try to radio to somebody, say, hey, I need help. I'm out of gas, and give your location over the radio. And if whoever's out there listening can help you, they might help you, Because it used to be, years ago, what they used to do is, on CBs, they would have channel 9. They had this one channel, and it was channel 9, and it was for emergency use only. When I was a kid, my dad would always tell me, if you play with a CB, do not talk on channel 9, because that was always reserved for emergency use. That's why today, when you dial emergency, like 911, that's why they put the 9 first and then 11 for calling emergency. Because back in the day, CBs would have channel 9, and some CBs would have the number 9 lit up red for emergency. And what you used to be able to do back in the day is you could turn to channel 9, and if you was in emergency, needed help, you could radio to central dispatch or somebody and say, hey, I need help, and your local law enforcement back in the day would monitor channel 9. Your local dispatchers would monitor channel 9 and say, yeah, what's your problem, where you at, and you could call for emergency. But to run one of these, you have to plug these in to a power source, DC cigarette lighter, and you need to have an antenna. Let me pause for a second, I'll show you an antenna. This right here is a Citizens Band CB analog antenna. CB radios use an analog frequency. These were made back when TVs were analogs, AM, FM were analog. And what you do is, this has a really long cord on it, and it has a magnet, so you can mount it on the roof of your car, truck, semi, whatever, to anchor it down so it don't go anywhere. And what you would do is, back in the day, is you take your cord here, you take this part, and it's threaded, you screw it on like you do a nut and bolt, lefty, loosey, righty, tighty for tightening it down, and you screw it on. As you can see, that's my cat there. I have an old black cat. And you would screw it on like this, and then you would plug it into your power source, and then you would turn this on, and this antenna would receive signal. As long as you have this antenna and you have this on and working, anyone near you, you can say, hey, anybody out there, and you can talk to people back and forth. As long as you got power and somebody in your area has one of these, you can radio back and forth to each other and talk. Kind of like this is what they had before cell phones. This is your first mobile communications talk and stuff. And you would be able to, here kitty, let's get down. You'd be able to talk back and forth to people. Well, this is what they used before cell phones. Everybody had one of these in their cars. And then when cell phones became the norm, then CB started to be obsolete. Now, if you want a CB radio, your best bet is to either go to some sort of electronic store that still sells CBs, or any truck stop out there has CBs. Now, the only ones that really much anymore use CBs are people who are hobbyists who like to collect vintage technology. Like I, once in a while, will go down the highway and have one and turn it on and listen to it. But CBs are kind of now became more obsolete, so what you're mostly going to get nowadays is static, because nobody hardly uses them anymore. But what I would suggest in a survival situation, if you need, and you live out in the country and you need communication, it's good to have one of these on hand and be able to have some way to plug it into your DC port. This has been black electrical tape. Somebody Because usually when you buy these CBs, they just come bare wire, and they have a fuse right here. And if you ever have a blown fuse, I'll show you the fuse here if I can open it. I forgot how these work now. Okay, let's see here. Well, yeah. It's supposed to push this in and twist it open, but I unfortunately forgot how these work, per se. But anyways, there's where your fuse is. It's a little round fuse, and you want to have some of those on hand, but unfortunately I don't. But yeah, the fuse helps you protect your radio from getting damaged. And if the fuse blows, all you do is you just simply twist and open this up, and you can access the fuse, replace the fuse. And most electronic stores that sell electronic parts and stuff and hardware will have those on hand. But yeah, if you, or your local CB radio shop, you know, like your normal truck shops will probably have fuses for radios. But yeah, if you ever want one of these, you can always go to a CB shop and get you one. Go to a truck stop and you can get a CB radio pretty easy. Cobra is a good brand, and Uniden is another company, and there's many more out there, but you're going to find a lot of Cobras because they're a good brand of CB radio. But yeah, this is what started it for me into vintage electronic. My dad had a bunch of these because he was part of the CB area, and he showed me how to work these. And then after that, I started the development of liking electronic stuff. So, and from there on, I started liking vintage technology, like record players, 8-track players, cassettes, CDs, you know, all that good stuff, and vintage computers as well. You know, I developed a passion for liking that stuff too. But this is what started me into liking vintage electronics and vintage technology, is learning how to use one of these. And this is your speaker down here. They have a built-in speaker so you can hear people talk, or if you have an external speaker, you can also set it up to make it easier to hear people talk. Because what you do is, you turn to the channel you want. Like the most popular channel truckers use on these is channel 19. And you go to channel 19 and you can listen to truckers. Or you can what they call key up on the microphone. Key up means where you press this button on the side and you won't hear anything, and then you can talk to the truckers. Say, hey, anybody out there want to talk? And then when you're done saying your message, you let go of the button here. This turns on your microphone. Whenever you have this button pressed in, everybody who's got a CB around you can hear what you're saying in your vehicle or in your house. So if you don't want to want somebody to hear your conversation in your house, you want to make sure you let go of the button. This button right here on the side. That's to turn your mic on so you can start talking again. And you go like this. Hey, can anybody hear me? 10-4, breaker, breaker. Oh, my cat just knocked over the antenna. But you could go breaker, breaker. Can anybody hear me? Got in 10-4 and learn CB codes. There's a whole thing about CB codes, you know, like what to use. Like, for example, 10-4 means, hey, got your message, I heard ya. And 10-20 means, hey, what's your location? Like, back in the day, so you wouldn't stand there for 9 million hours trying to tell somebody, hey, what's your location? You would say, hey, what's your 10-20? And that would mean, what's your location? When somebody said, hey, I gotta take a 10-100, that means I gotta find a rest stop and probably go to the bathroom or something. So yeah. It used to be, now, back in the day here, anyways, in Michigan, back in the day, they used to require, the FCC used to require you to have a license to operate a citizens band radio. Now, far as I know, the FCC no longer allows you, anyways, in Michigan, allows you to, no longer requires you to have an FCC license to run a citizens band radio. You know, but back in the day they used to, but they no longer do. Now, for ham radios, you do need a license to use one of those. Now, I don't personally own a ham radio, because ham radios are kind of like these, but they're more powerful and they're a different frequency and stuff. and I don't have the money to afford a ham radio, and I'm not too much into ham radios to justify owning one anyways, and plus you have to take a class and get a special license, and I just don't feel the need to do none of that stuff because I'm not really into ham radios. I'm more into these, but again, as long as somebody around you has one of these, let's say you buy 2 of these and you got antennas and they both work, you can keep one for yourself, give one to your friend down the road or whatever, and you can talk back and forth to each other. So in a survival situation, it's good to have some sort of radio, whether it's a citizens band radio, two-way radios, or one of those. I know they have those little now Boomhauer Chinese radios. It's good to have some sort of extra communication for when cell phone towers go down and when your landline telephones go down, because I use still landline telephones. I don't use cell phones, so if the landline telephone system goes down or the cell phone towers go down, you want to have a good way to communicate. And as long as you got one of these and your neighbors or somebody nearby you has one, you can reach each other and get help or whatever the case may be. Now this, in a survival situation, I have another one of these that actually works. It's an older Cobra model. And if I ever in the future needed to need help and my phone was down or whatever the case may be, and I couldn't get internet or something happened, what I can do with this, the other one I got that actually works, I could hurry up, plug it into my car. If my car's got a good battery and I can start it, I can turn the key, start up my car, plug it into my cigarette DC adapter on the car, plug in my antenna, and then try to reach somebody through that. Now, for the most part, CB radios are kind of dead, so it's going to be a little harder to pick up somebody, but if you got one, you can still pick up somebody. The best thing is for these, let's say you do a lot of travel on the highways and stuff, if you have one of these hooked up, you'll most likely pick somebody up on the highway. But when I was a kid growing up, I lived out in the country. My father had a bunch of these because in the 90s, we didn't live too far from the highways. And at that time, people were still using CBs and until about the early 2000s, I'd say, when the CB finally kind of went away. Now, in my area, I know people that still use CBs. So if in the event, something was to happen, I know I could be able to pick somebody up on a CB radio and contact them and say, breaker, I need help with whatever the case may be. But yeah, this right here, even this is a citizens band model. It's good to have some sort of backup communication system for when the grid goes down and stuff. And I had a bunch of these radios, my dad's collection, but I gave them away to my one uncle who's a truck driver and could use them more than I could, because where I live, it's hard to pick up anything because I live in what they call the valley. So if I wanted to make one of these radios work really good, I would have to have a really tall tower, CB tower antenna, because obviously here, because this kind of antenna, I would have to have it way high up on the roof, a really long coaxial monitor cable. That's what they call this, a coaxial cable. I would have to have a really long one and then stick it into my house. And to make one of these work 10 times better, I would have to have a really tall antenna. Now, if I lived out in the country, I would probably get a tall, what they call tower antenna or ground plane antenna for a CB radio, because these antennas are designed for a person that just wants to stick one in their car and kind of goof around. These are what they call a mobile citizen band radio antenna. They have on the bottom a magnetic, so it will stick. Let's see here. For example, it will stick to, this is metal, it will stick like this, and then on the roof of your car, so it won't fly off going down the road, and it allows you to receive a signal and hear other people talk. So yeah, and this again is what got me started into liking technology as my father, showing me how to use one of these back in the day and growing up around them. I had an uncle that's a truck driver and a grandpa who passed away who was a truck driver. My grandpa Meyer, years ago, when he was a teenager, he joined the United States Army, and he used to be a truck driver for the U.S. military. He was in the U.S. Army, and he served in Korea and was a truck driver. And he said he used to haul supplies to the front lines. He was basically what you call a suicide jockey, which in trucking terms, a suicide jockey is somebody that's hauling explosives or something that's highly flammable and could instantly kill you if you're not careful. And the term suicide jockey came from World War II, because that's what they used to call truck drivers, a suicide jockey, which, because you're hauling supplies to the front line and the enemy's trying to blow up your supply chain. And so, yeah, and through that, my grandpa used CBs and stuff, and back in the day, my mom and dad used to use CBs, talk to family members that were truck drivers on them and stuff. And I remember around my area, my mom would holler and call her grandpa's by a CB handle and say, "Hey, breaker," and his handle and talk. But he unfortunately passed away because old age basically caught up with him. And my grandpa Meyer died at the age of 84. He survived the Korean War and stuff. But yeah, this is what, and that, my grandpas and my uncles that were truck drivers, because I had two uncles that were truck drivers. Both of my grandpas did delivery kind of trucking service. My grandpa Meyer, he drove over the road trucking, and then my other grandpa, he did little Class B straight trucks and delivery van type service. But yeah, this right here again is what started the whole me developing a liking to vintage technology. So yeah, and my goal is for my survival situation is to buy a completely brand new, never been used Citizen band radio and hook up. Now this, you can hook up to DC, or you can buy a special power inverter that will allow you to connect this up to regular home use, to regular 110 AC home outlet. Back in the day, my dad used to have these, and that's what he used to do. He had this special little box that you would take your bare wires and a screwdriver, and it would have like a car battery, a positive and a negative, and your black would go to the negative, your red would go to the positive. And what you used to do back in the day, he would hook it all up, plug in the power inverter, turn that on, and then turn the radio on, and everything would work. And of course, he would have an antenna screwed on. But yeah, that's how it works back in the day. That's how these work. Again, all you need is one of those this one's wired up for DC. Basically, all you need is a way to plug in a DC, plug one of these into a DC cigarette lighter port, and then just have an antenna, and you can pick up something if you're near a highway or you're in an area that still uses Citizen band radios and you have a lot of friends. So yeah, that's about it there, and hope you like this video and you learned something about radios and vintage technology. Again, this is what started my liking to vintage technology and vintage electronics and so forth. And so yeah, I hope you all have a good day. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like this video and you want to see more of my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and hope you all have a good day. And if you like this video, please feel free to hit the like button or comment down below what your thoughts about radio, walkie-talkie, CB radio, Citizen band radios, about what you like and dislike, and what do you like about two-way radios. I used to have a pair of two-way radios, but I got rid of them because they were only a 2-mile range and stuff. But yeah, comment below what your thoughts are on these, and if you like them or dislike them or whatever, feel free to comment below your thoughts, and hope you all have a good day, and thank you for watching.